The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We're ranking middle infielders, second base, and shortstop. We're also going to talk about our must-haves and some other baseball news as well. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show.
Play ball!
Welcome into the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com and Righteous Felon Jerky. I'm your host, Vince Stover, and today, as I am normally, I am joined by the one and only senior fantasy baseball writer for BellyUpFantasySports.com, Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
We are doing good out here in the great state of Texas, and spring training underway, games underway, so it's time to get excited about some baseball. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's show.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show, as a matter of fact, and looking forward to it. This is our third.
It's confirmed.
That's right, third edition of this program. If you missed the past episodes or ranked catchers and corner infielders, you can go back and listen. If you just look up the Sports Stove podcast, you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can go back wherever you're watching us live as well and catch those past shows. We want to say hello to our live viewers watching us on the Sports Stove YouTube page and the Belly Up Fantasy Facebook page as well. And of course, all those listening in at a later time via podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or again, wherever you get your podcasts at. And today it's all Vince, all Kevin. No guests today. We're going to carry the show today, Kevin. The fans have spoken. They said we want more of Vince and Kevin, and so we said, okay, we're going to give it.
We're here to give everyone what they asked for. So
that's right. Give the people, or stealing that from somebody else, but give the people what they want.
I tried to change that up a little bit because that a lot of people say that, and we're here to give the people what they want.
You know what, Kevin? We give the people what they need.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. What they need, because what you need is not necessarily what you want.
That is true. That's a good life lesson for all you young people watching us today. Hey, Kev, let's get into our first segment of the day. It's our Fantasy Burner. All right, Kev, our Fantasy Burner topic today is a pretty simple one. The must-have player, the guy that you are trying to get in every fantasy league you're in. We're going to go a batter and a hitter that we're going to do everything in our power to get on our teams this season. Let's start with batter. Who's the batter you have to have on all your fantasy teams this year?
Well, Vince, I kicked this around a lot and said, no, I don't think that's him. But the guy that I'm looking at is one that we've already spoken about way back on our first episode, and that is the Kansas City Royals' MJ Melendez, who is a catcher who's masquerading as an outfielder. And so I had him last year, and he is a guy that you can get later in your draft, and he's a guy that's going to be in your lineup every single day almost, because he's in the outfield or he'll be behind the plate a few times. And so on my fantasy teams, I only want one catcher.
Right.
And because even though there are some players, and we talked about that before, where the catcher position is pretty, surprisingly deep this year. But even so, I want a guy who is not going to be out of the lineup 3 days a week. And most catchers are. And I can have him, and he's a guy that batted leadoff for the Royals last year, and he's a guy that has 20 home run potential, and I really, really like him to be in my lineup. Plus, he's, he can bat from the left side, so that the whole shift thing that we've spoken of before is going to benefit him. And so for the batter position, MJ Melendez, Kansas City Royals, is the guy that I want to see if I can get on my team.
Yeah, I like that pick. For me, I had to have a catcher in my lineup every day. And so if I get one of those catchers that is going to be an everyday guy, like a Dalton Varsho would be another guy like that, then I can live with one. If I don't get one of those guys and I wait on catcher, I'm going to end up getting two on my team. And I do that in every league I'm in because I hate having a day where I got nobody in the slot. So I'm going to hold a second catcher. But a guy like Melendez, a guy like Varsho, if you get those guys, obviously, and that's part of your strategy, then you don't have to get a second catcher on your roster.
Yeah, I could see, Dalton Varsho, but you're going to have to give up too early a draft pick to me.
True.
To get him.
Yeah.
I would love to have him. I had him in one of my other leagues, but that was a value play. That is not the case this year. So I am not planning on getting Dalton Varsho because I'm not going to pull the trigger in the 5th, 6th, 7th round for a catcher. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah. My guy this year is going to be Eloy Jimenez with the White Sox. Okay. I'm all in on these White Sox outfielders. And I think the value is really good on him. A lot of people are out on him. He's had injury issues and things like that. And for me, though, as I'm looking through these positions, outfield is one of those things that you can get some guys late in the draft that have a ton of potential. Now, it's going to be hit or miss, right? You might strike out on this one. But for me, Jimenez is a guy that I can get late in the draft. In every single draft I'm in, I can get a good value on him. And I can put a guy that, if he stays healthy, is going to be a top 15 outfielder if he stays healthy. So I'm all in on Jimenez this year. I like the White Sox guys. There's a number of White Sox guys I like this year, but Eloy Jimenez is the guy that I say, you know what? I'm going to try to get him on every team I'm on as my third outfielder, maybe fourth outfielder, depending on how the draft falls. Any thoughts on him?
Okay. Well, I think it's safe to say that you don't have to worry about me rushing over and picking him.
Right, and that's why he's a value pick, because I can get him really late. I was
looking at him, and I was like, that's just – if I'm going to reach for a Chicago player, there's one we already talked about, and that's Vaughn.
Yeah.
And because he's the first baseman / outfielder, and I'm really high on him. He's another guy that I thought, well, maybe I'd talk about, but I decided not to.
So let's go to pitchers, and I'll go first on this one. Okay. I'm going to kind of do a curveball on this one for you, Kev. Originally, my thought was Corbin Burns, but he had the arbitration issue with the Brewers. He's not happy in Milwaukee. That scares me. It's not to say I won't draft him, but that one scares me a lot. He might have a down year, or he might get traded in the middle of the year, and that might be a good thing. Who knows? But I'm going to actually go to a side of pitching that we don't talk about a whole lot, and that's closers. Okay. And I'm going to go out and get Devin Williams in every single draft I'm in. And again, it's a little bit of a homer pick here, but Devin Williams last year was the setup guy until Hader gets traded, and that Hader trade just shook the whole locker room. Nobody was ready for it. But Devin Williams is a phenomenal baseball player, a great pitcher, and I think everything's going to come to fruition this year for him as the closer in Milwaukee. They should have a good enough team to win a bunch of games this year. They'll be in competition with St. Louis for sure. But he's a guy that I look at and say, okay, people want Edwin Diaz. People want Emmanuel Clase. I want Devin Williams on my team. And so I think I can get him at a decent value this year because he's not the first guy going off the board. And as a closer.
Or even the second.
Correct. So I think I can get a good value on him. And as a Brewers fan, I want him on my team as well. So Devin Williams is my pitcher. There's lots of good starting pitchers that I'm intrigued by, but I didn't want to give away my sleeper for next week, so I didn't go that route. Or not next week, in a couple weeks. But anyways, who's your pitcher you got to have on your roster this year?
Well, I went around and around on this one as well, and I decided to stay home in the state of Texas with my pick, and
Jacob DeGrom?
No.
Oh.
No. My pick is the Texas Rangers, John Gray.
Oh, my goodness.
That sounds like you absolutely disapprove of that.
John Gray, just like you said with Eloy Jimenez, John Gray is on my do not draft list.
Okay. So let me tell you why he's on my draft list. All right. So
give it to me.
As you mentioned, he had some injury issues last year, but when he pitched pretty well. and he was I got it all right here. He was 7-7, 3.96 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, and so I think that he's going to be healthy this year, and he is a guy that's going to pitch kind of in maybe 3 spot in their rotation, and so he's not going to be under a whole lot of pressure. But even if he was, he's a veteran guy, and I think that finally the cloud of Colorado is going to, the sun's going to shine through, and and the Rangers ballpark is no longer the hitting terror that it once was, and so I like him as a late round guy that you can go out and get, and if it doesn't work out, it's not going to be that detrimental to your team because you didn't give that high draft pick for him. And so I think that if he's on the, let's say, because unlike a lot of guys, and you know this about me, starting pitchers is where it's at with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're on a staff of 9 and he may be, let's say he's my number 7 starter, I think you got a pretty solid staff working if that's the case.
And I agree with you. Him not being in Colorado, you call it a cloud, I call it a stank. He gets a stank in Colorado.
All right, so he turned some fan on and get rid of that smell and so and like I said, he was the number 2 guy,
right,
for the Rangers last year, and so that didn't work out quite so well. But he's gonna, I think, slide back a little bit and let Eovaldi and let Mr. Injury Prone, get all the press and everything else. And so I think that's going to work out well for him this year.
Yeah. And I'm in other leagues with people who like to get him as well. I just, for me, he's a guy I don't want to touch him. And so when I see him like coming up, in the draft, and it's like his name is there sliding towards the top of the best available list, I get excited because I know somebody's going to draft him, and that means somebody I want still going to be there. so I always look forward to that. But you're right.
So
you're right.
Be something to look at when our draft is ongoing.
Yeah.
And so if he's sliding back there, as I predict he will.
Yeah, he will.
You could say, okay, who after Kevin takes him can I get? So
and we're going to
lock that into your mind.
We're going to find out who that is in our league watches our show when we get to our draft, because we're going to see a guy get taken a round early that we said we're going to draft those guys, and we're going to know they listen to our show, and we'll see if they're paying attention or not. But nonetheless, and actually at the end of this program today, we're going to set our draft order for our fantasy baseball league, Belly Up Fantasy Baseball League that we're doing again this year. And but we'll do that at the end of the program, so those who don't care can shut off the podcast or the show, whatever, when we get to that point. All right, there you go. That's our fantasy burner this week, as we talked about the guys we got to have on our team. And that brings us to the next segment of our show. It's our Call to the Pin. Our Call to the Pin is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. If you want the purest jerky in the game, you got to go straight to the source. Righteous Felon has partnered with the best natural Black Angus beef producers in the land to lock up the supply and guarantee the best tasting, best textured, and freshest beef jerky on the market. Visit righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code BELLYUP, and you get 15% off your purchase. Again, that's righteousfelon.com. And you get 15% off your purchase with the promo code BELLYUP. And I'll tell you what, again, I'm on record saying I love the texture. I like the taste too. I love the texture of this jerky, Righteous Felon Jerky, and encourage everyone to go. If you like jerky, go give it a try.
Yeah, Righteous Felon, that should take you to the site just to see what that's all about. So
That's right. They got spicy, they've got non-spicy, they've got some unique jerkies.
Non-spicy is the way to go with me. Otherwise, it's not going to go well.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get them on, somebody from Righteous Felon, try to get them on the show here at some point this year as well.
That would be awesome.
And see what they have to say about their product as well. But this is the segment. We typically have a guest. Today we do not have a guest, but we just talk about general Major League Baseball news, and there was some news this week. Manny Machado signs 11-year, $350 million deal to more than likely end his career in San Diego. I mean, we've talked about these long contracts before, so let's start with Manny Machado and San Diego and what San Diego's doing, because they're rumored to be in the Ohtani hunt next year as well. They bring in Xander Bogaerts this year. They've got Fernando Tatis coming back. They got Juan Soto last year. They've got a pitching staff as well. And what do you think? Don't worry about the long-term thing yet. So what do you think about Manny Machado and San Diego kind of tying up this core group, hopefully for a while?
Well, when it comes to a guy like Manny Machado, he definitely comes across as a guy that if he's not on your team, you absolutely despise the man.
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely despise him. But it seems to me that if he's on your team, then you are enjoying life. It seemed that way when he was on the Orioles and when he was on the Dodgers for a short time. And now he's down in San Diego. And so I think that I'd like to know where the Padres are storing all this money that they're signing all these guys. I know that they've got a great ballpark. I've been to that ballpark. It's outstanding, but they're blowing the doors off of their their payroll.
Yeah,
going way beyond what they've ever done before. And all I can say is this has had better work for the Padres, all this stuff that they're doing. Otherwise, there's going to be some guys that are probably going to be out on a highway, thumbs out saying, "Hey, take me home." And so, as a Dodgers guy, I don't know how exactly I feel about this. And so I think they're trying to out Dodger even the Yankees.
Sure.
And so that never really worked out well for them until they got to the point in the 90s where they started bringing their own players in there. And that's when the whole thing took off, really. Then they just kind of added it around to that. So just because you have all these high-priced talent, and you have to also wonder, where are you going to play all these guys? You only have so many positions on your team. Somebody's going to get left out, and someone's going to be going, man, I'm not getting what I thought I was going to get when I came here.
The nice thing about baseball is now you could be lower down the order, but generally speaking, you're going to get your at-bats. You're going to get your opportunities. And if you hit well, you're going to get moved up if you're lower in the order and all that kind of stuff as well. Right now, the projected lineup to start the season, according to Fangraphs, is Xander Bogaerts in the leadoff spot, Juan Soto at 2, Machado 3, Cronenworth 4, Nelson Cruz at 5, Matt Carpenter at 6, Ha-Seong Kim at 7, Trent Grisham 8, and Austin Nola at 9. Obviously, when Tatis is activated and everything, he's going to jump in there probably for Cruz some, probably for Ha-Seong Kim some. Well, actually, probably for Trent Grisham as well.
Yeah.
And then they got a pitching staff, though, too. Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Blake Snell, Michael Wacha, and Nick Martinez. Seth Lugo also could be in there. Him and Martinez will fight for that last rotation spot. Josh Hader's their closer as well. They got a deep team. Like
they do. They've got a deep team, and the only thing not the only thing, but Nelson Cruz, bat number 5, when the dude's 47 years old now or whatever.
42, yeah. Okay. Almost 43.
Okay. And he was a holy terror with the bat.
Right.
But last year, that went to sleep.
Right.
And so I am not buying Nelson Cruz as the number 5 hitter in anybody's lineup, especially that one.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to come crashing to the ground real early on, especially like you said, when Mr. Hurt My Wrist and all that gets into the lineup. And so hopefully nobody's investing in Nelson Cruz. That's the way I'll just say that.
And Tatis' suspension ends on April the 20th.
Yeah, 20 games in, so that's not so bad.
Right.
Right. And so it'll be interesting when we talk about him, who and where are they going to draft him in fantasy drafts?
Yeah. And that'll
knowing
be a
that
conversation
you can't
because
put him on your IR spot for 20 games.
correct.
And
Yeah.
I have a feeling that will not be me. I
Yeah.
will not be
When we
drafting
get to
him.
our rankings, we'll talk
Yeah, we're
about
going to get
that.
into that. I don't want to get too far, people are like, well, we already talked about it, so we don't need to listen any further. But
We will definitely talk about that because he's in one of our rankings, meaning he's not in the other one of our rankings. So,
what
so
a
we'll
okay, a preview right there.
there
That
you
whets
go.
the appetite.
Stick around a little bit longer for that one.
But Vince, it's interesting that you brought up Manny Machado because I don't know if you saw, he was the first batter in spring training to get a strike called on him because he wasn't in the box in time, and he's also one of the ones who's complaining the loudest about new rules and all that stuff, and we've already been through all that, and I've been seeing online and everything else. There's a lot of guys, and I'm a baseball purist, right? Okay, even I say get in the box and hit,
Yeah.
right? Get in the box and hit, and we won't have this problem. And I've watched a few of these games over the weekend of baseball, and it seems to me on a small sample size that these games already are going much faster than they have in the past. And so I think this is something that's going to work. So
I hope so. Did you watch the Braves Red Sox game
I
that
was going to
ended?
get ready. I was going to bring
Okay.
that up as well because you had the first game end on a strike called when the bases loaded, 2 outs, 2 strikes, and the game ended because it was minor league, not minor league, but it was spring training. So they didn't go extra innings, but the game was called because he didn't get in the box and he had the third strike called on him and everybody went home. And people were all upset about that. But get in the box. It's not that hard a concept. Get in there, get ready, and take your hacks.
And it looked like he thought he was getting the automatic base because he thought the pitcher was late. But the umpire called him out for not being in the box.
Right.
I did not see the game. I just
still
saw
got 8 seconds to throw the ball. So, and I don't know the guy's name. I saw it, but I don't know what it is. But it seems to me he was a rather young player, so he ought to be fully immersed in the rules, unlike some of these other, Machado, for instance, and guys like that. So it's going to be interesting to see I think that they'll get all this straightened out by the end of spring training.
Right.
And then when things get really going on, and you mentioned the Braves, and that's something else because they've got problems with their pitchers. Even before that happened, I saw that their pitchers are having problems getting the wind up going when they have to and all that. And now their hitters are having problems. So Braves are a team to keep your eyes out for, I think, because that's a team that everybody's expecting to play well, and they should. And they can't afford to let something as small as a 15-second clock trip them up.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm interested to see these pitchers that had those weird wind-ups, the swinging the arms and the extra little movements. They can't do that anymore. It'll be called balk if they do it now. So they're going to have to be shorter on those kinds of things as well. It's going to be intriguing. Hopefully spring training is enough time for all these guys to figure it out. And so when we get into regular real games, we're not dealing with another month of guys trying to figure it out. The World Baseball Classic is affecting this a little bit with guys that are playing in that. And they're using the rules from last year. But I would assume guys have been working on this. I would assume this is not
this is not something that they announced 2 weeks before spring training. So everybody knew this was going to happen. So pitchers and hitters both should be well versed in this. And it's just interesting to me. The veterans are the ones that are over there crying.
That's not surprising at all.
Well, yeah, because they like their routines, which is kind of one of the problems of baseball. And so these guys need to get out of these routines and just simply play ball.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, we got let's get right to our rankings. How does that sound?
Okay.
All right. So don't forget, visit righteousfelon.com. Promo code BELLYUP. That gets you your jerky at 15% off. Let's head into our third segment of the day, the Fantasy Focus. I have a feeling this conversation is going to go a little ways, so we're gonna take a look at our rankings today, and we're gonna start off with second base. And I was listening back to our episode last week, and I probably did not do a great job doing this for our podcast listeners. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you probably didn't have an issue with this, but our podcast listeners couldn't see the graphic on the screen, so I apologize to you all. Second base rankings, I'm going to give you both of our lists, and then we'll discuss them. Kevin's got Altuve, Semien, Albies, Arraez, Chisholm, Jimenez, Andres Jimenez from Cleveland, Tommy Edman at 7, Jorge Polanco 8, Gleyber Torres at 9, and Brandon Lowe from Tampa at 10. We both have Altuve and Semien and Albies and Arraez as our top 4. That's where it changes briefly. I've got Jake Cronenworth, who's not on Kevin's list. I got him at number 5, Tommy Edman 6, Andres Jimenez at 7, Jazz Chisholm all the way down at 8, Gleyber Torres at 9, and Ketel Marte broke into my top 10 as well at number 10. I am a Marte believer, and he's failed me and failed me and failed me, but I still put him at number 10 on this list. But let's start at the top because, Kevin, we both have the same top 4 players. And for me, it's the top 3 and then a slight drop off to number 4. But I love the top 3. I know you like the top 2, I believe. But why don't you kind of break down this top 4?
Okay, so Ozzie Albies, if he can stay healthy, is a top second baseman.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any problems until last year, so I think he's going to be fine with that. So I would not be surprised if Ozzie Albies turns out to be the best value, maybe the best guy fantasy-wise at second base. I would not be surprised at all about that. And as far as Jose Altuve, you mentioned that you're not into a lot of Houston guys last week. But if you're talking about second baseman, who else are you going to have besides Jose Altuve?
Right.
There's no one else.
Right.
That's how, I guess the chasm, we could talk about it from Jose Altuve to everybody else. He's by far stands out as the second base of choice. If you, if you want him, you're going to have to give up a high draft pick.
Which second round pick, right?
I think so, which I'm probably not going to be willing to do that.
I agree.
So I don't think that I'm going to wind up with any shares of Jose Altuve on my team. But even so, he is the best second baseman. And anywhere you look at it, he hit 300. He hit 28 home runs. He played 141 games. So, the age thing apparently is not an issue so far. And he scored 103 runs. So, and 87 strikeouts, which, when it comes to baseball, when we're talking about second base shortstops, you have a guy who hits 14 home runs and strikes out 187 times. I'm real tired of seeing that. So when you get a guy who plays second base shortstop that doesn't strike out a lot, that increases his value. And so I really like that about him. And so he had 18 stolen bases, which is kind of down for him, but I think that's going to come up with the new rule.
Yeah.
So when you look at this, right, let's see. He has a 329 lifetime batting average of balls in play. So when he puts the ball in play, good things happen. And he's 32, which is not ancient. So I'm willing to roll with him at number 1. Marcus Semien, I know, killed early on a lot of fantasy teams a year ago. He didn't hit his first home run until I think it was middle of May.
It was late, yeah.
And I remember Dan was talking about, because Dan drafted him, but that didn't stop him from making the playoffs and ultimately winning the championship. So that did not cripple him altogether, but he got it together in the second half and still hit 26 home runs. And he will not get off to such a slow start this year. So I like him a lot. And we talked about Ozzie Albies, and Luis Arraez is a guy who people are down on him when I look at the rankings, he's not number 4 in anybody else's rankings, but you or I.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what, second base rankings, if you look at other people, who's all wrong, by the way, but if you look at
all
other
wrong.
people,
That's right. All
it's
wrong. These are the right
second
answers right here.
base is weird. I see Tommy Edman up there at number 4 on a lot of people's lists. I see
I
Jazz.
like Tommy Edman, but I don't like him that much.
No.
No. I think maybe number 7. You got him at 6. Maybe that's about right, I guess. But I thought you could probably drop him down even a little bit lower and still be okay.
Yeah, Arias, listen, he's a great Major League Baseball player. I'm not sure he's going to be a great fantasy player this year, but neither is anybody else at second base. So
none of these other guys are the defending, batting champion.
Right.
And so he is a guy I think that and he's not in a good Miami lineup as he was in Minnesota, but it's not terrible.
Right.
And I think that he's going to get on base and he's going to do some things. If you're looking for power, second base ain't it to begin with. And so, if Luis Arias, and I've done some fantasy, mock drafts, and he is falling in a lot of the mock drafts I've done. And if I'm sitting there and I see him falling like he has, I'm going to swoop in.
Yeah. Yeah. I love him.
Second and first, I believe.
Yeah.
And so I like that a lot.
Yeah. I'd love to see him 7th, 8th round, something like that. I don't know that he'd go that far down, but that'd be a great spot to grab him at. A huge value, I think, there too. Altuve, I love what you said about Altuve. Best player, unquestionably best second baseman, but I don't want to take him in the second round. I don't mind taking a second baseman in the 3rd round if it's the right guy. I think Altuve has been so consistent in his career. And at the end of the day, he had one bad year and he was injured all of it. So I think you have to write that off. I think Simeon's going to have a really good year this year too. I probably prefer to have Albies out of those 3, but that being said, if Altuve dropped, I'd be happy to have him. But he does not drop very far.
He's not going to drop. He's not.
And my dad's in 2 leagues that I'm in. He loves Altuve, likes him on his team. He's a keeper in 1 league as well. So, I know where that's going to go. And then I think you spoke well on Arias as well. So let's move down the list. You got Jazz Chisholm at 5. I've got him at 8. I know you like his what it will be position availability here as well. Right. I'm an anti-Jazz guy, although he should steal a ton of bases this year.
Right.
How much do you love Jazz?
I think that maybe him moving to the outfield, maybe that's a good thing. Then maybe moving around a little bit will keep his hamstrings stretched out or whatever, And so I think he's going to be playing. And it's weird that we talk about we got 2 second base from Miami on both our teams, but when he gets that outfield qualification, and our league, we still have the middle infield and all that, and so he qualifies all over the place to be in your lineup. So he's a guy that he's going to be running. He's going to be out, in the lineup almost every game. And so if I was to get him, I would be happy with that. Then maybe if he got hurt, then I'd say, oh, well. But he's a guy that I'm willing to take a chance on because his upside is higher than these dudes that are coming up behind him to me.
Yeah. See, for me, Jazz is another guy I don't draft. I think he's incredibly talented. And if he stays healthy, he can be a really good player. I don't trust he's going to stay healthy. And for that reason, it's just not worth my time and my picks. So I don't draft Jazz Chisholm. I had him in a league when he broke onto the scene, I guess, in a Yahoo league I was in. And it worked out fine. But at the end of the day, I don't want him on my team. And I know someone else will take him. And more than likely, someone will reach for him because he's kind of got he's that flashy kind of player. And people, that don't pay a lot of attention go, oh, I've heard of that guy. He's been on interviews and things like that. I'll draft that guy. So for me, again, it allows me to get another guy I want, knowing that someone else is going to take Jazz Chisholm, where I can go ahead and skip on him and get someone else I desire. I'm going to come back to Jake Cronenworth in a minute, but you and I both have Tommy Edman and Andres Jimenez here in these 6, 7 spots. We have them flipped. And here's my philosophy on these. Tommy Edmonds, the safe pick. Andres Jimenez is the potential breakout pick. And so if you want to go safe, you're going to go Tommy Edman. If you want potential breakout, you're going to go Jimenez. And because he was a big prospect when he came up in Cleveland.
He sure was.
And he was kind of disappointing, but I think that's going to turn around this year. So I personally would probably rather have Jimenez on my team, but I've got Edman ranked just above him. I think they're in the same group, same tier. But for me, I like breakout players, potential breakout players better than safe players. What's your mindset with Jimenez and Edman?
But when it comes to, you said that, he was kind of disappointing, but even when he's disappointing, he hits 293 with 17 home runs, 20 stolen bases, and caught just 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
True.
so when you're in the Cleveland Guardians, I'll make sure I say that correctly, and their lineup is going to be pretty good, I think. And so he's going to have every opportunity to score, to drive in runs. And so I really like him. And he's only 24 and a left-hand hitter.
Yep.
And so when I was thinking about him and Edman, that left-handed hitter is what pretty much slid him up in that spot and the upside. And so if I get Andre Jimenez at second base, I think I'm going to be pretty happy with that, and not worry about second base a whole lot for the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like him a lot. He's a guy I considered as my gotta have on all my teams kind of guy. He's a guy that'd be happy to get, but he is a little bit of a wild card at the same time. So I didn't go that direction with that choice, but I like him, and I think he's going to be good this year. We've got one more player that both of us have on our list, and it's Gleyber Torres with the Yankees. I tell you what, you want to talk about value picks? People are afraid of Torres because he's had some rough years. You're afraid of him.
Really?
I think it's going to be a good year for him.
Burned badly
by
Gleyber Torres a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so when I was putting him down, I kind of had to hold my nose while I was doing it. And I'm like, I cannot believe that I'm writing Gleyber Torres' name down at number 9. But having said all that, when I look at him, Gleyber Torres played 140 games a year ago. So that takes that, as you mentioned, stink off of him. And he hit 24 home runs. And the only thing I'd like, because he only walks 39 times, that is a huge problem. And while that knocks him down, that's why he's at the number 9 spot, because he doesn't walk.
Yeah.
And you want a second baseman to me that walks, because that, you get a point for every walk.
Yeah.
And so that's an issue to me. He only had 10 stolen bases. That'll probably increase.
Agreed.
But he's not the lefty hitting guy, so no shift helps him. And let's see, and he's only 26.
Yeah, he's
so
young.
He can still do it. And but like I said, I actually had to almost force myself to write his name down, because honestly, you could be pretty sure Gleyber Torres will not wind up on my team.
Yeah, he would have to be very late, and I needing a second baseman for me to consider him. I looked at these guys. For me, again, I'm not drafting Jazz, but I couldn't leave him out of my top 10. For me, though, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe even 14 on the second base list, they're all the same player. They're all just fine, okay, whatever. None of them are great. Maybe some of them have breakout potential, but ultimately these are guys that if you end up with this guy as your second baseman, you're going, well, I missed out on second base, and maybe he'll have a year, and if not, I'll cut him and pick up somebody else that's having a year. It's
right.
I'm not excited about the 9-10 spot.
Yeah, that's what you kind of have to have, that mindset, unless you do wind up with Jose Altuve or Simeon, one of those guys, to take your guy, and then if it doesn't work out, there's going to be somebody who you're like, during the season, where'd that guy come from?
Right.
And so, as you mentioned, once you get past 5, maybe even 4, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter anymore. So whoever you get. If it works out, great. If not, move on.
Yeah, I'd be okay with any of my top 7, but my 4, 5, 6, 7 guys I'd need to get much later in the draft. You got Jorge Polanco at 8. I considered him in this 9-10 spot as well. I think he fits right in there. I'm afraid of Minnesota in a bad way, fantasy afraid. I am scared Minnesota's not going to produce much this year. So I'm kind of fading away from Minnesota for the most part. They got a pitcher I like, but for the most part, but Polanco's a guy, again, you get down late in the draft, you need a second baseman, and he's there.
Needs a starter.
Yeah.
And so, and let's see, because I have them all, that Fantasy Pros has them ranked, and they have him at 124th overall.
Okay.
And so at 124 overall, that means in our 10-man round, you're getting him at the 12th round or so. Yeah. And if you can get him at 12, that's pretty good value to me.
Agreed.
And, if he's going earlier than that, 10 or so, then no.
Right.
But Polanco, he's a guy who has done it.
Yeah.
And maybe not so much last year, but he still played 104 games. He had some injury issues. And so, and he's a switch hitter. I like that. And so if I wind up with Jorge Polanco on my team, which I had last year, but once he got hurt, I had to, send him to the farm, so to speak. Torres was a turd last year, Mike Brown said.
Okay. Thanks for viewing.
I don't know
Mike.
about all that. He was a turd the year before that. Okay.
Hey, Mike's in our league. Mike's
yeah.
the co-founder of Belly Up Sports. We appreciate your support, Mike.
That's right.
And that's the thing I like about it. We talked about it, right, Kevin? There are guys who absolutely hate guys like Torres, who absolutely hate guys like Ozzie Albies because they got burned off.
Like I said, it was almost like I said, you almost had to put a gun to my head, put him on this list. But
it's guys who have them and have a bad experience. And example, Exhibit A.
Professional input. I had him last year. Okay.
There you go. So there it is. You get a guy that's on your team you hate, and I'm that way with several guys that I'm like, you know what? I'm never touching them again. They killed me. I'm not doing it. Well, we got Brandon Lowe as number 10. And I considered him at 10 as well.
Another guy that I kind of wrestled myself with a little bit because he had some injury issues as well. And but the guy is capable of hitting 30 home runs.
Right.
And so at number 10, and he's at 146th ranked by Fantasy Pros. And so if you get him in, let's say, the 14th round, now we're talking some value.
Yeah.
And if he returns to what he was in the past, because he only played 65 games, so no one's rushing out to get Brandon Lowe.
Correct.
Okay, so if he falls that far, I think that would be a solid selection in round 14, Brandon Lowe. Because, like I said, he's a guy who's capable of hitting 30 home runs, and he's a left-handed hitter, and he's only 28 years old.
Yeah, I like his brother better in Texas. But I'd take him in around 16. He'd have to fall a little further than that for me.
Okay.
But
that might happen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I got Ketel Marte at 10. I like what Arizona's doing. A lot of young guys.
I do. A lot. They got some young guys, especially in their outfield that we'll talk about in another episode.
Yeah.
I like their lineup and what they're doing down there.
Yeah, so Marte's a guy I'll take a swing on, but again, it's got to be late in the draft. But let's talk about Jake Cronenworth. He's not on your list. He's number 5 on my list. So for to not be on your list, to be number 5 on my list, to me, this is a guy that provides you consistency at a position as well. I don't have it in front of me. I think he has multiple position eligibility.
Yeah, he has second base. Because I checked. Because some of these other things have him, listed as other places, but in ESPN leagues, he's listed at second and first. Okay, and for a guy that's supposed to have as much talent as he has that only hit 240, that to me is an issue.
And I can understand that. To me, I look at their lineup, and I think he's going to be doing that DH spot where we talked about Cruz before. I think he's going to get some opportunities to hit behind some guys. He can go a little further down in the lineup than where they have him listed right now. I think Cronenworth is going to be this guy that is, again, he gives you, you can play second base, you can play middle infielder, you can play first base, you can play corner infielder. And I believe he's going to get DH eligibility at some point this season as well. So he's just going to open you some doors, give you some opportunity. And I like him better than Edman. I don't think he has a higher ceiling than Jimenez, but I just think that overall he's safer than Jimenez. And that's why I got him at 5. I like him better than Jazz. I like him way better than Gleyber Torres. And I like him way better than Ketel Marte. So for me, he had to be in that top 7.
Okay. So, but I'm not willing to put forth the draft capital I think that you're going to have to put forth to get him.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. You don't have his ADP on you, do you?
Let's see. I have, in Fantasy Pros. Well, that's not bad. It's 169.
Yeah.
So at 169, that might go into the value that you were just talking about a little bit.
I mean, I'd take him over Brandon Lowe.
I don't think that's going to hold. He's going to go earlier at 169. I don't know if he will in our league.
He will go earlier in our league.
Yes, in our league, that's not going to hold. I was not buying that, and I'm glad I wrote it down. 169. I'm not buying it. And I think he's going to go in the top 10 rounds, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not.
Yeah, I like him in round 12. That's where I like him at, somewhere in that range. Which just saying something, right? When you're saying my 5th ranked second baseman, I like him in round 12. So it tells you a lot about my feelings on second base. Right. And I wrote an article this week on it.
I have about him too. Like I said, you can get any of these guys that are low. Some of these guys are not even mentioning. And you talked about Ketel Marte. I have him down as my value pick.
Okay.
Because he's ranked at 171st.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is a guy, like you said, he's a switch hitter. He hit just 240 as well. So, he's good, but he's a young guy.
Yeah.
Not young. He's 29. I'm wrong. But he's done it in the past.
Yeah.
And not that long ago. So if I can get him in the 16th round,
sure.
Man, that's great value to me.
Yeah.
Great value.
Yeah. If you miss on the top 3 or top 4 second baseman, you should not be drafting a second baseman until round 11 or below.
I think so too. And I think it's safe to say there will be none of these top second basemen on my team. So I'm going to be in the same boat as you and waiting for somebody to float to me. And Ketel Marte, because he last year that was not the case. He was coming off a good season, and he was coming off the board, and he was a disappointment a year ago.
Yes,
that's not going to be the case this year.
When you said Marte's your value pick, who's your bust?
My bust is Cronenworth.
Okay.
And so I just think that because I'm not, like I said, I'm not buying that he's going to be there after round 10. And I'm not going to expend that early of a draft pick for a second baseman that, even though he's got dual eligibility, there's other positions I'm going to be looking to fill, because I think I don't want to give away too much of my draft strategy, but it might be some offensive guys going early this year. And so the pitching is going to have to catch up.
Sure. I got Brandon Lowe as my bust, but I mean, again, if you're getting them 14, round 16, somewhere in that range, it is what it is. But I think guys are going to draft him around round 12, and to me, that won't work out well for you. My breakout or sleeper pick, and I hate to say it because I don't want anybody to know I like him.
Okay,
it's Jonathan India from Cincinnati. Okay. He had a great 1 year.
Looking at, and hitting in that great American ballpark. Might do wonders for him. So, yeah, I could see that. I don't have him written down, so I don't know what his ADP is.
Now, remember, last year I said don't draft a red, and I was right. I was right.
Well, you could have probably put that banner up behind you. That's right. That turned out to be absolutely true.
But this year, I've got some reds on my list, and Jonathan India is one of them. He has been devalued because of the year he had last year. He's on a horrible team in Cincinnati as well. But Jonathan India is going to get his points in fantasy leagues.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be as terrible as they were a year ago. I don't see that's possible, first of all. But,
yeah, they might be. They're a bad team. But nonetheless, that's who I've got as my sleeper. Let's get the shortstops. That went longer than I thought it was going to go. Shortstops. Now, these lists are interestingly different. All right, so let me read them for our podcast listeners. Kevin's got Trey Turner, Bo Bichette, Bobby Witt Jr., Corey Seager at 4, Tatis at 5, Francisco Lindor at 6, Swanson at 7, Carlos Correa at 8, Xander Bogaerts at 9, and Wander Franco at 10. We have some of the same people, but slightly different orders. I got Turner at 1, 2. Turner, to me, is a top 3 fantasy pick this year.
He's going in the first round. If he doesn't,
it's great. Lindor, I got Lindor number 2, Bogaerts 3, Seager 4, Franco at 5. You got him at 10. Willie Adames at 6. You don't have in your top 10. Bobby Witt at 7. I'm lower on Witt than a lot of people, but I got him at 7. Correa at 8. Bo Bichette at 9. And then at 10, I've got O'Neal Cruz. And we'll talk about that as well. Let's not spend time on Trey Turner because everybody knows he's the best. He's the best there is. He's the greatest one you can get. He gives you everything, and he's in a great lineup as well. So Trey Turner, number 1 shortstop. I don't think that's questionable.
Nobody needs to debate that. So.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's go Bichette next because I've got him at 9. You've got him at 2. Yeah.
And so, I'm interested to hear why you have him clear down there like that because he gives you everything you could possibly want. Played 159 games, right? Hit 24 home runs, 93 RBIs, hit 290, and his strikeouts. Maybe that's where you're going to head to on him. That's pretty high, but everything else you have to like. He's got a 347 career batting average of balls in play. So, that's elite.
It is.
And so when I saw that, I'm like, this guy is going to be able to keep on hitting, and he's hitting in a Toronto lineup where they're going to mash. And so that's why, and he's young, and I put him at number 2. I think that's a possibility I might wind up with him.
I think that shortstop is incredibly deep, and I would be perfectly happy with any of the 10 guys on my list, which is rare in all the other positions, with maybe the exception of outfielder. I think any of these top 10 on my team, I'm pretty happy with. So Bo Bichette being at number 9 is not so much me a knock on Bichette because I'm pretty high on these shortstops, and I think they're all going to be very, very good fantasy players. To me, Bichette is the guy that has that potential to bust. He's not my bust, but he's that guy that to me goes, okay, they should be great, but will they be great? And so I've actually knocked him down more so because I like the guys above him more than I like him. Not as much, even really a knock on him. He does strike out too much, but other guys do too. So at the end of the day, for me, it's a crowded position. I don't have. I got Trey Turner number 1, and then a small drop off, and then I think really the next 8 guys. So for me, 2 through 9, I think they're all in the same tier, and all really close in value, in my opinion.
Okay, that's fair. And
you got Lindor at 6. I got him at 2, but again, I just told you for me, 2 through 9 is very, very close. I think Lindor is going to have a good season. I think the Mets are going to have a good season as a whole.
And Fantasy Pros has him as a number 5 second baseman. And so right about there is where I thought he definitely needed to be ranked. And so I think that he might come off the board earlier than I'm willing to draft.
I agree with that.
Knowing what, I mentioned Bo Bichette earlier, but knowing what's sitting around there later on in the draft, shortstop, I might hold off on him on any of these guys.
Yeah, Bobby Witt we talked about at third base, so we're going to kind of pass on him for sake of time as well. Xander Bogaerts, excuse me, at San Diego, makes the move to San Diego again, a loaded lineup. I really like him there in San Diego. I think it helps him out where he's at. And maybe not as great of a park as where he was in Boston, but I think it's such a good team. I think Bogaerts is going to have a really good year in San Diego.
Well, because even though he hit 307, still he hit only 15 home runs.
Yeah,
you expect more than in today's shortstop game than 15 home runs. Let's see, he struck out 118 times, so he keeps that a little under control. So if I think he's another guy that's probably going to go where you have him ranked, and so I'm not going to be
You're not gonna reach
looking
for
to
that.
draft him that early,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of the way I feel about him. I think he's going to have a great year, and all these guys in San Diego could have a great year.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in
So
on San Diego. Corey Seager, Texas. We already talked about his counterpart, Simeon. We're high on Simeon. We both got Seager at 4, and I wanted to throw him lower. I just couldn't do it.
couldn't do it.
I got him
Left-handed
4.
hitter, and as we talked about one earlier episodes, he's the guy who was affected the most by the shift of any player in baseball the last 2 years. Not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and he talked about being, going to a new team and all that stuff, and that was pressing on him. And he's, I live here, and so I could see, his interviews or whatever. He looks much more relaxed this year. So Corey Seager is a guy who looks to have a monster year.
We'll come back to Tatis in a minute. Wander Franco, Kevin, I think Wander Franco is going to have a phenomenal year. Phenomenal year.
The only reason why I have him at 10 is because he hasn't done it yet.
Sure.
And so that's what's scaring me off. Just he's been the top prospect, the last 2 years now, and it just hasn't come together. If he does it this year, that's awesome. But I'm kind of show me.
Yeah.
Missouri, show me, and then we'll go from there.
I'm all in. I draft him and I send him a message and say, "You're on my team. I believe in you. Go do it." And he's going to go do it. Willie Thomas, I'm going to cry if I don't get him on my teams.
Okay.
He's a keeper in one league.
That's how you feel about it, and I have him down as my value second base or a shortstop actually.
Yeah.
They have him ranked number 87 overall, and so that's 8th round we're talking about, and
he won't be there in our league.
He could even go a little bit later than that.
He will not in our league. I will promise you he'll be gone by 87 in our league.
Okay, so I think that you look at him, right?
Yeah.
31 homers and 98 RBIs. What more could you want from your shortstop?
Right.
And so if it wasn't for you in the league, I could see Willie Adames coming to Team Wilson.
Yeah, I love Willie Adames. I love him. He's fun to watch. He's fun to listen to. And he's a really good baseball player. And if I wasn't a Brewers fan, I might not feel this way about Adames, but I am a Brewers fan. So let my homerism come through a little bit. Correa, we both got him at 8. He's in Minnesota. He had a weird off season.
By way of San Francisco and the Mets,
New York,
and Puerto Rico or wherever else he was visiting during the
season. He's got a lot to prove this year.
He does have a lot to prove, and everybody was scared off by his but he didn't have any injury. So I am satisfied that he's going to play as he always has.
I'm one of those people who's scared because if 2 teams passed on him now, but my deal is he's got another 3 years probably before that injury becomes a problem. But it does scare me, and I'd have to get him at a good value probably before I picked him. But he's worthy of a top 10.
Getting him as a value is probably that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Dansby Swanson in Chicago. I like Dansby Swanson. I think the Chicago Cubs got a good player in Swanson. I hate having Dansby Swanson on my fantasy team. He's a guy I'll pick up because he's a lot of times on the waiver wire. And he'll kind of get on a team.
He's been on the waiver wire in our league. I know that.
Yeah.
And, but 162 games last year, 160 the year before.
Yeah.
So he's going to be in your lineup every day.
He's consistent. That's the right word for it. Yeah, he's consistent. O'Neal Cruz, I've got him at 10. How far out of the top 10 did you have him?
It wouldn't take much for you to convince me to put him on the top 10. But playing for the Pirates is an issue for me. And he's a young guy, and he's also, seems like he needs to keep his cool a little more. Because you remember, he's the guy who hit the home run. And no, that was his third base cohort, I think, that did that. That hit the home run and then didn't touch first.
Oh, yeah. No, that wasn't Cruz.
Yeah, okay. So forget all that. But Cruz is a guy who he could be a usable player that you might be able to wait around on. I don't have him as my value because, as I mentioned, I have Adamas as my
Yeah.
value, but at 1A value, 1B value would be O'Neill Cruz.
Yeah, I've got him as my sleeper, my value, whatever you want to call it. To me, he's going to end up being a top 10 shortstop this year. There's rumors he's going to actually start playing more center field, which would be neat as well, and open up that eligibility. You know, my dad, he's in our league. He doesn't like picking guys that can only play in one position. He loves that versatility pick.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. I love that.
Cruz doesn't
if
give
it
you
comes down to a guy who has dual eligibility and they're about the same, the dual eligibility guy is going on my team every time.
All right, let's get to Tatis. You got him number 5. I didn't put him on my top 10 list. He hasn't played
I
in
hated
a long
myself
time.
putting him at
Now
number
listen,
5.
he's really young, and if he comes in healthy and doesn't get suspended for cheating again, then yeah, he's going to be that. But
there's no chance he's going to be on my team, despite the fact I ranked him at number 5.
Really? So that's interesting. I'd love to have him on my team if I can draft him really, really late. But we're going to have a guy like Dan D'Amico who's going to draft him, or somebody like that who's going to go out, or someone who doesn't pay attention and doesn't realize he's not playing for the first 20 games will draft him. But Tatis, for me, as a guy, he's just going to have to be a value pick, or else I can't draft him if he's going to miss 20 games. I can't do it.
Right. And so I it's one of those situations where I hated myself putting him there, and but you can't deny the talent.
Correct.
And because he's ranked 4th by Fantasy Pros, I thought, well, I'm not doing that. I just slid him back this one spot.
Yeah.
But like I said, there's 0 chance Fernando Tatis winds up on my team this year, because there's just too much, surrounding him, even when he is healthy.
Yeah, if I have all my positions filled and it's a bench spot and he's there, I will draft him. But that means that I'm getting him in the last 3 rounds of the draft.
Which is not happening.
I really don't think it's going to happen. No. And if he doesn't get drafted, well, I think he'll get drafted. But I mean, if he gets dropped after he gets drafted, I might go out and stash him, just because you never know who's going to get hurt. I mean, I got a keeper league that I've got Wander Franco and Willie Adames in. And if one of them gets hurt, throwing Tatis in there.
Yeah, and the other league that I'm in, I had both of those guys.
Yeah,
on my team.
Yeah,
and so one was hurt. I put him on my IR or IL or whatever the proper phrase is, right? And the other one played, and so I thought that worked out really well for my shortstop in the other league.
My bust is Brandon Crawford. A lot of people that I've played with really like him, like having him on their team.
I've liked him in the past. I'm not buying it this year.
I'm out on him, and like I said, O'Neill Cruz there is my value pick. Before we get
my bust pick, real quick, Tim Anderson.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Of the Chicago White Sox. All right, Mr. Jackie Robinson himself. There's so much not to like about him. There's 0 chance that he winds up on Team Wilson. 0.
This is the year that Tim Anderson could actually be a value. He has not been in recent years. He's been drafted way higher than I was willing to take him. Like I said, I kind of like the White Sox. I think they're a sneaky good team this year.
Yeah, I like some of their players. Tim Anderson, not it.
Sure, I can understand that. I can understand that. Okay, before
I wrote this down. Hasn't played more than 123 games in the last 4 full seasons. So
wow,
no.
Yeah, that makes it rough. Okay, very good. Before we get to our draft picks, I want to talk about our articles real quick. I recently came out with a Fantasy Shallows Part 2, where we talked about second baseman and how shallow the position is.
And I just want to mention, because you talked about in your article one fascinating tidbit, I thought, and that was if you're taking Max Muncy in the 8th round. I think you mentioned. Well, if you're taking Max Muncy in the 8th round, you probably should be playing fantasy baseball.
Agreed. Or you should be in our league.
Or you could be in our league, and that would be totally fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And there's some interesting guys in there, but go check out that article, bellyupfantasysports.com. Kevin continues to put out articles. What's the most recent one that you put out?
Well, I kind of went off script a little bit because I saw that fantasy basketball wasn't getting any love from our belly up cohorts. So I went ahead and I wrote it. And there's only 2 weeks left in the fantasy basketball regular season. So I wrote an article of the fantasy players that you're going to want to get off the waiver wire coming down the stretch. So that was posted just yesterday.
Okay.
And so if you're into fantasy basketball, which I am, and so you want to check that out. And so that was the latest one that I put out. And you could be relatively real certain that there'll be another baseball article to come. We talked about shortstops. I'm going to have some guys that are going to be on my value team that we didn't talk about tonight that are going to be in that article.
And we got lots of fantasy baseball articles up now.
There are guys bringing on the power. So get over there to fantasy, fantasy.com, because
there's a sleeper article on Yandy Diaz up right now. There is a 5 players I'll be watching closely by Ian Lemersall. We're going to have him on the show.
Some guys that I was not watching, so that was interesting.
Okay. And then, Kev's got basketball on there. I thought I saw another baseball article. But anyways, plenty on bellyupfantasysports.com right now. Make sure you go check it out. And we appreciate the support, by the way, of bellyupfantasysports.com of this program as well. So, Kevin, we're still going to do our fantasy draft order in just a second. But Kevin's on Twitter at Kevin62, WILSEA. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove. So for those of you who are not going to listen to our fantasy draft order, wanted to make sure we get that in there before you shut
down. You want to. This is must see TV right here.
This is important. All right, so here we go. Our fantasy baseball league draft is on March 15th, 17th. I forget. It's on a Sunday. March 17th, I think it is. We'll do it live here on air. Me and Kevin will be live with you. We'll have other guys from the league jumping on throughout the draft as well. And so we're going to go ahead and set that fantasy order. And we do it live on the show, so that way nobody can say we cheated. And this year we've got a bingo kind of thing that we're going to spin around, but I have to have it on the table or else it won't work properly. So here's what we're going to do. Kevin is going to pick a name of someone in our league. Then we'll spin the wheel, pull out the draft order, and set it that way. So, Kevin, pick anybody on the list. Who do you want to look at?
All right. So, let's go with Mike Brown. He's the co-founder and the reason why we're sitting here. So let's go ahead and go with him.
All right, here we go. Mike Brown. I'm going to spin the wheel. First one is out. Mike Brown is pick number 3. Pick number 3 for Mike Brown. He'll
let me get my pen so we can keep this straight. So number 3. All right. So
and Mike will complain about it. He'll say we cheated and all that good stuff as well. But that's
all right. You can shoot us an email later.
I can take it. All right. Who's the next name we're going for?
Let's go with your dad. How about Dad?
Dad, Dale Stover on the list. And I just lost it. Oh no, hang on. Sorry.
Now this is real musty TV right here.
Yeah, right. Now Dad's gonna get mad at me for this one. He is pick number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
Stover pick number 2. He won't be too upset about that unless I get number 1 or you get number 1. That's when Dad starts getting cranky. So, all right, good. So who's the next name?
So let's go with our defending champion, Dan D'Amico.
Dan D'Amico. Oh no, I'm losing it again. I think I'm going the wrong way on that thing. Number 5 for Dan D'Amico.
Okay.
The defending champion. Right.
Defending champion, middle of the pack right there. So
I was hoping him and Dad would be back to back because they had the debacle last year with the shutdown of ESPN and
all intrigued the whole season. So
yes. All right, who's the next one?
Let's go ahead. Let's go with you.
Me. Okay. Oh, we gotta make sure we get a good one then. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. Pick number 10.
Okay,
that's 10.
That should work for you.
I like it. I like being at the end of the draft. Wouldn't have mind being a little bit earlier, but I'll take it there. I like that turnaround. The 10-11 spot's a good one to be in. And then the
All
problem
right.
is when you pick at that spot, you have no idea who's going to be on the board when you come back around because it's a long time to wait.
That is a long time to wait around. So let's go with a guy that was on our show many times last year, Mr. Nick Macaroni.
Nick Macaronis. He is pick number 9. Nick Macaronis, pick
right.
number 9.
All right. So people don't think that we're totally faking this thing out. How about me?
All right,
Right.
Kevin Wilson is next. By the way, I like having Nick on each side of my picks because I kind of feel like I know where he's going to go on when he's going to pick some homer picks. So I like having him around me as well.
Yeah,
All right,
so
we're doing Kevin
Philadelphia
Wilson
guys are
this
definitely
time.
going to Nick. You can be sure about that.
All right, here we go. Kevin Wilson's pick is number 7.
Okay.
Okay, I was
Number
hoping it
7.
wasn't going to be number 1 because I knew I was going to hear about
we
that.
definitely know that we're doing something underhanded.
That's right.
If I was number 1. All right, so let's go with Brennan Myers, one of our
Brennan
newer
Myers,
guys.
brand
Isn't he?
new to the league this year, Brennan Myers, and he gets pick number 1.
All right.
Congratulations, Brennan.
Okay. So that works out for him.
Now
All right.
we'll see if he goes Ohtani or if he goes a different direction. It'll be a fun one.
If he doesn't go Ohtani, just if you're watching this, then
Oh,
you
don't
might
tell
be
him.
happy.
Okay.
Well,
You
yeah,
do
that's
you,
Ohtani.
Brennan. You go out and
Yeah,
get you a Emmanuel Clase at number 1
Okay,
overall.
a guy that let's see. How about Drew Child?
Drew Childs. He is pick number 4.
Okay.
Drew Childs, pick number 4. Haven't had a chance to really get to know Drew yet, so looking forward.
No, me either. So yeah, so if you're watching this, definitely shoot us some Instagram or something.
All right, so we got pick number 6
with
and pick number
Brandon
6.
Brown.
Pick number 6 and pick number 8 left. The only 2 that are left in here, and this is Brandon Brown, and he gets pick number 6. Brandon Brown, pick number 6. And the last guy, who are we missing?
So Nathan.
Oh, Nathan Newen.
Checks in at number 8.
Number 8. Nathan Newen, number 8 on the picks as well. So congratulations, guys. Now we got it set. And like I said, this draft will be live on air March 17th at 8 o'clock, normal fantasy baseball show time. And we're going to have these guys on at different rounds. We'll bring them on one at a time and talk to them as we're drafting. Try to get a little bit of idea of what they're thinking, make fun of them for their picks, all those kinds of things as well. They'll be there. So, Kevin, next week we'll be back Sunday night, 8 o'clock. As always, we're going to be covering outfield, and we'll talk some DH. We're not going to rank DH because everybody's listed as a DH these days. But we will talk a little bit about DH. But we're going to cover outfield next week and working on getting a guest lined up for next week as well. Kevin, I've already told him to get you on Twitter, Kevin62, WILSEA, bellyupfantasysports.com is where all the articles are. Anything else you need to plug?
Oh, that's, we've when you talk about complete coverage, right here is where you get it.
All day. Well, not
All
every
day.
day. I was going to say all day, every day. Not every day, but every Sunday you get it.
That's right. But fantasy,
And-
as you mentioned, Belly Up
Okay.
Fantasy is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So get over there and check it out.
Very good. And then my show, the Sports Stove Podcast, will air on
Sure.
Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Me and Dad, we are starting our baseball breakdown this week. So we're going to go division by division and break down each division, leading us up to the baseball season. So make sure you tune into that. You can catch it wherever you get your podcast as well. Thank you to BellyUpFantasySports.com and to Righteous Felon. Don't forget to go to RighteousFelon.com. Use the promo code BellyUp to get 15% off your purchase. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, both live and later on in the podcast version as well. He's Kevin Wilson. I'm
That's right.
Vince Clover. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.
See you there.